In September 2020, a young Dalit woman in India was brutally assaulted and left paralyzed. Her dying words named 4 upper caste men as her attackers, igniting a firestorm of controversy that would expose deep-rooted injustices in Indian society. But as the case unfolded, it became clear that this was more than just a horrific crime. It was a reminder of the ongoing struggle against caste-based violence and systemic oppression in modern India. How could a case that seemed so clear-cut, and with 3 of the 4 accused walking free? Today we're going to talk about the Hathras gang assault case. September 14, 2020 dawned like any other day in Bulgari village, Hathras district, India. The air was thick with the promise of another scorching day as the sun climbed higher in the sky. For the 19-year-old Dalit woman at the center of our story, it was just another morning filled with familiar routines. She rose early, as she always did, to help her mother with household chores. The young woman, whose name we'll withhold out of respect for her family's privacy, had dreams of completing her education and finding work outside the village. But for now, her days were filled with the rhythms of rural life, cooking, cleaning, and tending to the family's small plot of land. That fateful morning, she set out with her mother to collect fodder for their livestock. It was a mundane task, one they had performed countless times before. But on this day, everything would change. As they worked, the young woman's mother realized she had forgotten to bring water. She asked her daughter to continue gathering fodder while she returned home to fetch some. It was during this brief window of time, with the young woman alone in the field, that the unthinkable happened. 4 men, all from upper caste families in the village, approached her. What began as harassment quickly escalated into a brutal assault. The details of the attack are too horrific to recount in full, but suffice it to say that the young woman was subjected to unimaginable violence. She was strangled with her own dupatta, a scarf, leaving her paralyzed and fighting for her life. When her mother returned to the field, she found her daughter lying unconscious, her clothes torn and bloodied. The sight was one that could haunt her for the rest of her days. In a state of panic and desperation, she called for help. Neighbors came running, and together they managed to get the young woman to a local hospital. The extent of her injuries was severe. Her spinal cord was damaged, leaving her paralyzed from the neck down. She had multiple fractures and deep lacerations. Doctors worked tirelessly to stabilize her condition, but it was clear that her road to recovery, if there was to be one, would be long and arduous. Despite her critical condition, the young woman showed remarkable courage. In the days following the attack, she regained consciousness, long enough to give a statement to the magistrate. With great effort, she named her 4 attackers, all men she recognized from the village. This act of bravery would prove crucial in the fight for justice that was to come. She told the police how she was sexually assaulted and choked using her dupatta as she fought off her assailant. The lady recorded a video statement about it, which went viral. But even as the young woman battled for her life in the hospital, her family found themselves facing an uphill struggle of a different kind. Their attempts to seek justice for their daughter were met with indifference, skepticism, and outright hostility from local authorities. The system that was supposed to protect them seemed intent on silencing them instead. 6 days, that's how long it took for the police to officially acknowledge this brutal assault. In those crucial first days after the attack, what evidence was lost? What opportunities for justice slipped away? The clock was ticking, and with each passing hour, the chance for a conviction grew dimmer. When the victim's family first approached law enforcement, they were met with a wall of indifference. Station House Officer D.K. Verma dismissed their claims, attributing the incident to caste rivalry. Despite the family's desperate pleas, the police initially refused to register a first information report, an FIR. This crucial first step in the legal process was denied, leaving the family feeling helpless and abandoned by the very system meant to protect them. It was only on September 20th, 2020, a full 6 days after the assault, that an FIR was finally filed. The delay in registering the case had devastating consequences for the collection of evidence. In SA cases, time is of the essence. Guidelines state that swabs for sperm testing should be collected within 3 days of the alleged assault. By the time the police began their investigation, this crucial window had long since closed. The inconsistencies in the police's handling of evidence were glaring. The victim's medical evaluation revealed severe injuries, including a broken spine and ruptured blood vessels, showing the brutal nature of the assault. Yet, the police's response lacked urgency and thoroughness. They failed to conduct a timely medical examination or record the victim's statement promptly, leading to significant lapses in the investigation. It was only after public outrage and media attention reached a fever pitch that the 4 accused were finally arrested. But by then, the damage had been done. The initial inaction by the police had raised serious questions about systemic biases against Dalit victims in Uttar Pradesh. The CBI's investigation later revealed the extent of the police's failure. They had not followed proper protocols, and their lack of prompt action had severely hampered the case. This negligence was not an isolated incident. Past cases of caste-based violence in Uttar Pradesh have shown a pattern of insensitivity towards Dalit victims by law enforcement. And then something shocking happened. As the clock struck 2:30 a.m. on September 30th, 2020, a hushed and hurried cremation took place in Hathras. This secretive act would soon ignite a firestorm of controversy across India. What drove the authorities to cremate a young woman's body in the middle of the night, and how did this decision impact the course of justice? The victim had died from her injuries on September 29th, 2020, after a 2-week battle for survival. Her family, already devastated by their loss, now faced an unimaginable ordeal. In Hindu and Dalit communities, funeral rites hold profound cultural and spiritual significance. These rituals are not merely traditions, but are deeply rooted in religious beliefs, serving as a means to honor the deceased and ensure their safe passage to the afterlife. For the victim's family, performing these rites was their final chance to show love and respect for their daughter. However, the Uttar Pradesh police had other plans. In a shocking turn of events, they forcibly cremated the victim's body without the consent or even the presence of her family. The victim's brother later alleged that the police used petrol during the cremation, a claim vehemently denied by the authorities. Eyewitnesses described the scene as hasty and secretive, with the family reportedly locked inside their home, unable to say their final goodbyes or perform the last rites according to their cultural practices. The police's actions sent shockwaves through the community and soon the entire nation. The Allahabad High Court later expressed its dismay, stating, "The incidents which took place after the death of the victim leading up to her cremation, as alleged, have shocked our conscience." The Uttar Pradesh police attempted to justify their actions, claiming they had obtained consent from the victim's family for the cremation. However, the statement was met with fierce denial from the family, raising serious questions about the transparency and accountability of law enforcement and handling sensitive cases involving marginalized communities. As news of the midnight cremation spread, public outrage erupted across India. Protesters took to the streets, demanding justice for the victim and accountability for the police's actions. Activists and community leaders condemned the forced cremation as a violation of human rights and an affront to the dignity of the deceased and her family. The incident was seen as a continuation of the systemic oppression faced by Dalits and other marginalized groups in India. The question remains, why was the victim's body cremated without her family's consent? While the authorities cited concerns about public order and potential unrest, many saw this act as an attempt to destroy evidence and silence the family. The hasty cremation raised suspicions about potential cover-ups and further eroded trust in the justice system. This shocking disregard for cultural practices and basic human decency became a turning point in the Hathras case. It transformed a local tragedy into a national scandal, exposing deep-rooted issues of caste discrimination and abuse of power within India's law enforcement and social structures. In the days following the victim's death, Uttar Pradesh police and government officials began to paint a very different picture of events. Senior UP police officer Prashant Kumar made a startling claim. According to forensic reports, no sperm was found in the samples collected from the victim. Based on this, he asserted that the young woman had not been violated at all. This statement marked the beginning of a concerted effort to reframe the narrative surrounding the case. The Agra police and Hathras district magistrate went even further, dismissing reports of the assault as fake news. They suggested that these claims were merely attempts to incite caste-based tensions in the region. This rhetoric quickly spread, with officials at various levels echoing the sentiment that the case was being blown out of proportion for political gain. However, experts and activists were quick to point out the flaws in this reasoning. The forensic samples had been collected nearly 2 weeks after the assault, long past the window when such evidence would typically be detectable. This delay in evidence collection, a critical misstep in the investigation, was now being used to cast doubt on the victim's entire account. In a disturbing development, counter-narratives began to emerge about the victim and the accused. Some upper caste individuals in the village started spreading rumors that the victim's family was responsible for the incident. One of the accused even claimed that he and the victim had been friends, and that her family opposed their relationship. These insinuations served to muddy the waters and cast doubt on the victim's character, a common tactic in cases of sexual violence. The victim's family found themselves not only grieving their loss, but also fighting against a tide of misinformation and victim blaming. They alleged facing pressure from the administration to change their statements. In a video that later surfaced, the Hathras district magistrate could be heard telling the family, "Don't ruin your credibility. These media people will leave in a couple of days. Now it depends on you if you want to keep changing your testimony." This blatant attempt to silence the family and control the narrative shocked many observers. As news of the Hathras case spread beyond the borders of Uttar Pradesh, a wave of outrage swept across India. In major cities like New Delhi, Agra, and Lucknow, thousands took to the streets to voice their anger and frustration. On October 2nd, 2020, demonstrators gathered at Jantar Mantar in New Delhi, calling for the resignation of Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath. In Agra, around 5,000 sanitation workers from the Valmiki community went on strike on September 30th, 2020. Their action not only demanded justice for the victim, but also showcased the solidarity among marginalized communities in response to the incident. As the protests gained momentum, prominent political figures attempted to intervene. Former Congress President Rahul Gandhi and General Secretary Priyanka Gandhi tried to visit the victim's family, but their efforts were thwarted by the police. The authorities detained the Gandhis, citing concerns about public order. This heavy-handed response only served to fuel public outrage further, with many viewing it as an attempt to silence dissent and shield the government from criticism. The media also played a crucial role in amplifying the case's visibility and maintaining public pressure on the authorities. In response to the growing pressure, the Uttar Pradesh government made several moves. They suspended 5 police officers, including the superintendent of police, for their failure to act promptly and for mishandling the case. This action was seen as an attempt to regain public trust, but for many, it was too little, too late. The case's national prominence eventually led to its transfer to the Central Bureau of Investigation, the CBI, on October 4, 2020. This decision came amid nationwide outrage and demands for a more thorough and impartial investigation. While the Hathras case ignited national outrage, the reaction within Bulgari village itself was far more complex. Bulgari village, like many in the region, is characterized by a stark caste divide. The majority of the population belongs to upper caste groups, particularly the Thakurs, while the Dalit community, including the victim's family, occupies a marginalized position. As news of the assault spread, the reaction of many upper caste villagers was not one of sympathy or outrage, but of defensiveness and denial. Some expressed a desire to suppress the incident, claiming that the victim's family was tarnishing the village's reputation by speaking out. The victim's family soon found themselves facing severe social and economic boycotts from the upper caste villagers. Reports emerged of the family being treated like prisoners in their own home, under constant surveillance and threats from the community. The police protection they received felt more like house arrest than security, further isolating them from potential support. Perhaps most shockingly, pro-accused rallies began to emerge shortly after the incident. These gatherings were organized by upper caste groups and other right-wing outfits. Participants publicly supported the accused and accused the victim's family of fabricating the case, despite the overwhelming evidence to the contrary. This division was exacerbated by statements from the upper caste leaders that revealed a dismissive attitude towards the victim's plight. BJP MLA Surendranath Singh, for instance, suggested that societal norms should be instilled in women to prevent such incidents, effectively blaming the victim rather than addressing the root causes of violence. The economic interdependence between Dalit and upper caste communities in the area further complicated the dynamics. Many Dalits work in agriculture and labor for upper caste landowners, creating a reliance that is often exploited and manipulated during caste conflicts. This economic vulnerability made it even more difficult for the victim's family and other Dalits to speak out against injustice. While the nation grappled with the implications of the Hathras case, a startling revelation emerged. 115 phone calls had been exchanged between the victim and one of the accused. This unexpected twist would add layers of complexity to an already contentious trial, raising questions about the nature of their relationship. On December 19, 2020, the Central Bureau of Investigation filed a charge sheet in a special court in Hathras. The document invoked charges of gang assault and murder against the four accused. The CBI's findings seemed to contradict earlier statements by local authorities. The agency's investigation uncovered evidence supporting the charges of gang assault and murder, challenging the narrative of denial that had initially surrounded the case. Throughout the trial, the victim's family faced continued threats and pressure. Their safety concerns were so severe that they were placed under heavy security, including being guarded by machine gun-wielding paramilitary forces and monitored by CCTV cameras. Their intense surveillance, while meant to protect them, also served as a constant reminder of the danger they faced for seeking justice. The trial itself was a grueling process. The defense team for the accused sought to capitalize on the inconsistencies in the initial investigation, arguing that the evidence was insufficient to prove the charges of SA and murder. The prosecution, meanwhile, worked to overcome the challenges posed by the mishandling of evidence in the early stages of the case. On March 2, 2023, the Hathras District Court delivered its verdict. In a shocking turn of events, 3 of the 4 accused, Ramu, Luvkush, and Ravi, were acquitted of all charges. The 4th accused, Sandeep, was convicted of culpable homicide, not amounting to murder under Section 304 of the Indian Penal Code. However, he was not found guilty of SA or murder. The grounds for acquittal cited by the court included insufficient evidence to prove the charges. The verdict raised serious concerns about the effectiveness of the legal system in handling caste-based violence cases. The low conviction rates in such cases have long been a point of contention, and the Hathras verdict seemed to reinforce these concerns. It left many questioning whether justice had truly been served, and what message this outcome would send to perpetrators of caste-based crimes. Perhaps most troublingly, recent statistics indicate that incidents of violence against Dalits have actually increased in the aftermath of the Hathras case. The case has had a profound impact on discussions about caste and gender in Indian society. It has forced many to confront uncomfortable truths about the persistence of caste prejudices and the failures of institutions meant to protect all citizens equally. The public outrage and sustained activism following the case have pushed these issues to the forefront of national discourse. Experts have proposed a range of systemic changes to address the root causes of caste-based violence. These include reforms in police training, changes to evidence collection procedures in sexual assault cases, and the implementation of more robust witness protection programs. There have also been calls for increased representation of Dalits and other marginalized communities in law enforcement and the judiciary. The Hathras case exposed deep-rooted injustices within India's social and legal systems, from the brutal assault of a young Dalit woman to the mishandling of evidence and the midnight cremation. Each turn revealed systemic failures. It calls for continued vigilance, advocacy, and systemic reforms to build a more equitable society for all Indians. That's all for today. Thanks for watching.